I recently came across an email exchange pertaining to a person or a group of people trying to contact the dead. This happened a few years ago, but the contents of the email have just come to my attention, so I thought I'd post it here. The poster had been seeking help on Craigslist and had written an ad, looking for an expert in the paranormal to help us contact a spirit. An acquaintance of mine, I'll call him John, found the ad and promptly replied to it. The following contains the emails that were sent between John and the people who posted the ad. Monday, January 16th, 2016 at 5:43 p.m. Hi, what you're trying to do is absolutely insane. It should just never be done. May I ask why you would want to do this sort of thing to begin with? Thanks. John. Monday, January 18th, 2016 at 11:04 p.m. My roommate, he's been having crippling nightmares in which an entity wants to speak with him. We know not whether this spirit is malevolent or benevolent, but we feel as if the only way to stop these unspeakable nightmares is to contact him in the human world. These are the details regarding the dream. The entity, it uses me as a vessel in his dreams to speak to him. And after he wakes up, usually a little after 3, he feels paralyzed, as if a force is pressing on his back and holding him down. He has also experienced his covers being tugged at, as if the being is in need of something. They have been getting worse. Last night, he heard wailing shortly after awakening. We live in a busy college neighborhood, so this may be a coincidence, but it doesn't explain the dreams. I myself, I've been having the feeling of being watched, and at times, I've felt as if something's standing behind me. If you can help us, we would be grateful. January 19th, 2016 at 9:38 a.m. Hi, you shouldn't take any risk with this sort of thing. Go to church or pray to Jesus. I mean, this is no tongue-in-cheek advice. Consult a priest for advice if you can. The last thing you want to do is try and make contact with any spirit. It's not to be taken lightly. Yes, please understand. Take close care. John. Tuesday, January 19th, 2016 at 2:21 p.m. I should have taken your advice. He's here. He's always following me, like a shadow. I'm lost. May God have mercy on me. January 22nd, 2016 at 1:40 p.m. You can take it now or anytime. With Jesus, it's never too late. He died for your sins, so just believe in him. And as far as this thing you're dealing with, go to church. Talk to them. Get a hold of a priest. Get comfort and any advice. John never heard from these people again. Perhaps it was a joke, or maybe the party had contacted something dangerous. Such matters shouldn't be taken lightly. You never know what's out there, watching you, waiting.
Reddit user Van Bede just wanted some quick cash, but instead he found himself on the receiving end of a very intense friendship offer. It started when he successfully sold his juicer on Craigslist. The buyer asked if he could deliver the item to his house, and Van Bede happily obliged, since the buyer lived close by. As they were finalizing the sale, Van Bede and the buyer made small talk about things that they one day wanted to buy. The next day, Van Bede jumped back on Craigslist and came across an ad for a very specific model of a desk he wanted. He inquired about it and found out that the seller happened to be the same guy who bought his juicer. Van Bede chalked this up as a coincidence and went over to inspect the desk. When he got there, he found it was nothing like the one pictured in the ad. In fact, it was clear that this desk had been recently cobbled together from wood scraps. The next day, Van Bede received a text message from the bogus seller asking if he wanted to come over for a beer. Van Bede politely declined, wanting to keep all of his organs in his body. A short while later, he came across a Craigslist ad for car rims that were the exact make, model, and year he needed. Van Bede couldn't believe his luck. He rushed over to the arranged meeting point and found that, you guessed it, the seller was the same guy, yet again. Van Bede realized that this guy had taken note of all the things he'd said he wanted during their first meeting. He'd been posting ads specifically for Van Bede, trying to lure him into hanging out. Fearing he was going to be skinned and turned into a lampshade, Van Bede changed his number and the locks to his house. He then swapped out the batteries in his stun gun.
A few months ago, some POS lowlife broke into my apartment while I was at work. They rummaged through all of my stuff and tore apart my room in the process. They took a bunch of my stuff, including a ton of cash I had stored away, my Xbox One, a 40-inch flat screen, and a bunch of food from my pantry. I came home that night to find my apartment had been trashed. It looked like a cyclone had moved through my bedroom. Of course, I ended up calling the police, who came right after and investigated the apartment. The person had smashed the window in my bedroom and crawled in. I live on the ground floor, so it'd be pretty easy for them to get in. I gave the police a list of all my stuff that went missing, along with the serial numbers for the electronics. They unfortunately didn't find anything, or any fingerprints that they could use. And there were no cameras on that side of the building. I called the rental agency for my building about the window, but even they told me they couldn't do anything until the next morning. That was probably the worst weekend of my life. The very thought that someone came into my house and decided they wanted my stuff, it just sickens me. And I swear that thieves are the worst kind of people. A couple months went by, and there was no word on any of my stuff that got stolen. I expected that much. Police in my city are useless most of the time. I had already gotten a new TV, so all I needed was a new Xbox. I did some thinking and decided that I wanted to buy one secondhand, as I really didn't want to spend another $400 on a new console. So, I jumped on Craigslist and did some searching. Sure enough, I find a seller who wants to sell his for $250 along with all of his games and controllers. It was a pretty fantastic deal. The only issue is that the guy lived in the next town over. On the other hand, I was getting real tired of not playing video games, and so I gave in. I contacted the guy and inquired about the console. He told me his name was Sam. He seemed like a pretty cool guy and was even willing to hold it for me if I came to get it that same day. So I agreed. I jumped into my car 15 minutes later and drove the 45 minutes to the next town. The town was very rural, and there were a lot of wooded areas. The house I was trying to find was way out there, next to some old train tracks. I pulled up to the house, which was off a dirt road. It was a real POS, run down and overgrown. The old paint was almost all chipped away, and the guy had a massive trash pile right in the front of his yard that was filled with a bunch of old junk, like old TV sets and radios. I was unsure if I even had the right house, so I walked up to the door and hesitantly knocked. There was a short wait before I heard somebody shuffling on the other side of the door. It opened and revealed a very thin-looking man with a buzz cut. I took notice that his clothes were filthy. He was wearing a tattered flannel shirt with ripped blue jeans. "You Sam?" I asked him. "Yeah, you here for the Xbox?" I nodded nervously with a mm-hmm. He flashed me a smile and invited me inside. I already had a bad feeling, like something wasn't right with this guy. His house was a disaster. Almost every piece of furniture was filled with junk and garbage. It looked like he hadn't cleaned his kitchen in months. I knew right off the bat that he was a hoarder. I was worried about being the awkward one, but this guy was awkward, about as awkward as one gets. When I think about it now, I feel like he was probably on the spectrum, but I couldn't be sure. There was also a smell, like something in his house was rotting away. It was like something dead. He led me into the hallway on the first floor and stopped at the door that looked much newer than the others in the house. "It's right down here," he said. He pushed the door open to reveal stairs leading into a dimly lit basement. Alarms started going off in my head, and I knew that there was something seriously wrong. I stood at the top of the stairs, peering down. Sam stood behind me, almost as if he wanted to make sure I couldn't escape. "Go on then," I said, stepping out of his way. "You first," he replied. His awkward smile had gone to a cold gaze. When I looked towards the basement, the smell of rot had grown even stronger. When I listened closer, I could hear what sounded like millions of flies buzzing around down there. I turned quickly and pushed past him, sprinting down the hallway. He started to pursue, but then he stopped. I ran out of the front door and back onto the dirt road, jumping into my car before speeding down the road as fast as my car could go. Before driving off, I caught a glimpse of his smiling face in the front window of the house. I made it home safe, where I realized that he had sent me a text message. "Ha ha," followed by a winking face. The Craigslist ad disappeared after that, and I've since blocked his number. I thought about calling his town's local police, but after I calmed down, I realized there probably wasn't much they could do about it anyway. Days after, I started getting weird phone calls, usually hang-ups every time. This persisted for several weeks before I saw Sam's mugshot on the local news. I guess he lured another unlucky buyer to his house, and when the buyer also refused to go down to the basement, Sam assaulted him with a knife. Luckily, the buyer managed to fight him off and escape. The police were called, and they were shocked at what they found upon searching his house. This sick, twisted bastard had been killing local dogs and piling them up in his basement, where he did weird experiments on the bodies. The very thought of it made me sick to my stomach, knowing what potentially could have happened to me had I not ran. I don't know what happened to Sam, but I sure as hell hope that he's spending his days in a padded cell somewhere.